Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thinker St. James here. This is a video that I've wanted to make for a while because it's a subject that I've heard talked about over the years, but it's one that is always discussed in hushed tones, very vague details, nothing concrete, just a lot of rumors, but now it looks like we have something very unfortunate and much more real to bring us to it. And that subject is the intersection of gang culture and mixed martial arts in the country of Australia. As I've said, this is a subject that I have heard discussed a lot, but no one actually wants to be linked to any conversation surrounding it, not even linked to the gang part of it or anything related to that, but they don't want to talk about it, period, in a public setting because Australia is a small place and these gangs can be very violent to the point of being deadly, which is what happened here with the unfortunate murder of Suman Mokhtarian. Mokhtarian is a UFC veteran with, I believe, an 0-2 record, and he was gunned down earlier today. So this is from the ABC. This is Australia's ABC. Manhunt underway after man shot dead. Cars set alight in Sydney's Riverstone. It's a neighborhood in Sydney, Australia. The summary here says Suman Mokhtarian, 33, was found with gunshot wounds at 6 p.m. on Wednesday in Riverstone and died at the scene. Shortly after, a red Audi and white van were found alight at two nearby locations in Sydney's northwest. So going into a little bit more detail here. A manhunt is underway as police have confirmed two cars found engulfed in flames are linked to a targeted fatal shooting in Sydney's northwest. Suman Mokhtarian, 33, was found with gunshot wounds on Anna Luke Street in Riverstone about 6 p.m. on Wednesday. He was treated by NSW, that's New South Wales, ambulance paramedics, but died at the scene. A short time later, firefighters were called to Riverstone Road and found a red Audi set alight. Police then located a white van ablaze on nearby Matthias Street. Both vehicles were destroyed in the fires and 3 crime scenes were established. Mr. Mokhtarian was a mixed martial arts trainer and fighter and previously fought in the UFC. Police sources said he survived an attempt on his life last February when a gunman fired on him outside a gym in Wentworthville. So Suman Mokhtarian was a person that was not only now murdered, but someone who had been repeatedly targeted. He, in interviews regarding his fighting and his pre-fight interview packages, had talked about being on the wrong path in life and turning his life around. He is a co-founder, co-owner of Australian Top Team with his brother. His brother, also a former UFC fighter, and also a person whose life had been threatened by attempted violence. So going forward here, Superintendent Jason Joyce told ABC Radio Sydney on Thursday the vehicles were involved in the shooting. Superintendent Joyce said he was unable to confirm whether the shooting was gangland related, but said police were exploring a number of lines of inquiry. I have heard from various sources that it very well is gang related. Those sources are going to remain anonymous. I cannot confirm that 100%, but from what I have heard, it is very, very likely that this is gang related. You can see here some of the aftermath of those car burnings. This is Superintendent Joyce saying, "What I can say is that it was a targeted attack. There were some people who witnessed the incident. My heart goes out not only to the family of the victim, but also the people who had to witness it." Footage of the crime scene on Wednesday afternoon showed police cordoning off a residential street. So this happened with Suman Mokhtarian just walking down the street. I also read that not only had he been a target of an assassination attempt prior, but they actually had to shut down an entire MMA event that he was supposed to be coaching at because there were concerns about gang-related violence that may have taken place at the event because he was going to be there. So Whether or not Suman Mokhtarian and or his brother had left a life of crime behind them, it would certainly seem that that life of crime was following them and ultimately caught up to Suman. So that's the story regarding Suman Mokhtarian, his unfortunate demise, and by extension his brother Ashkan, who also had his life threatened due to apparent gang affiliations. But it goes deeper than that, and it goes deeper within their own gym, Australian Top Team. This story is from earlier this year. This is from May. This is from Sky News Australia. It's about to spike again. Former detective warns gang violence will erupt in Sydney as shooting victim is identified. Former New South Wales Police Force Detective Peter Moroney has warned there would be a spike in gangland violence across Sydney after a 29-year-old MMA fighter was struck by bullets in an apparent ambush. Another ambush. It would seem that whoever is targeting these members of Australian Top Team are very adamant about getting the job done. Now, granted, this is another time that it did not work out, but they are going out of their way to plan these things ahead. This is not, I saw you on the corner and started shooting. This is a planned out, premeditated attack. Going forward, Haider Kuder, who is known as the Smiling Assassin, was hospitalized on Monday night after being shot while driving a truck alongside Donald Street in Yanora in southwest Sydney. Kuder was driving while a vehicle stopped in front of him, and a man allegedly exited the vehicle and opened fire at the truck. New South Wales ambulance paramedics treated the 29-year-old for gunshot wounds to his wrist and abdomen before he was taken to the hospital. CCTV footage showed Kuder running from his truck before jumping over a fence to escape the attempt on his life. It is understood Kuder trained at the Australian Top Team gym in Wentworth, where a gunman, disguised as a delivery driver, opened fire in an alleged murder attempt on the former UFC fighter gym owner. There you go. I believe that was the one that befell Ashkan. Did not take his life, but was the attempt. So both of the Mokhtarian brothers obviously caught up in something pretty bad if these people are making repeated attempts on their lives. Either that or they tried to get out of this gang culture and were being repeatedly dragged back in to the point that Suman unfortunately lost his life. Mr. Moroney said the tit-for-tat style shootings have been ongoing for about 2 years over drugs, money, and power, warning a spike in similar shootings was imminent. Obviously, he was correct if this was taking place in May. It is the nature of the beast in the sense that if I exert violence on you for a certain thing, or if it is retribution, the other side will see it as the same. How far they go, that's the real good question, Mr. Moroney told Sunrise on Wednesday morning. It depends how much each side can stomach, the amount of violence each one is prepared to exude. I know that sounds terrible, but that's the nature of the beast we deal with. Mr. Moroney said the police would not give up, but conceded the shootings continued due to law enforcement resources and numbers. So there you go, another element of this. You have a gang culture that obviously has a good amount of members in their ranks and a police force that is not equipped to handle it. The former detective said there were other police priorities which redirected resources and costs which were channeled and shuffled around when necessary. I mean, I would think that gang violence in your neighborhoods should be somewhat of a top priority, but again, I am not on the ground in Australia and don't know what their resources are like, but if this is something that is bubbling over into the broader public, that would be very concerning, and obviously those resources were not allocated because Suman Mokhtarian is no longer with us. So this is just surrounding the Australian Top Team component of all of this. From what I understand with that aspect of it, there are a number of gangs that are ethnically based, operating in the avenues that this detective was talking about with drugs and other underworld activities, but that's only one type of gang in Australia. You have your ethnically based gangs, which are more like mafia style, I would say, families and that kind of thing. You also have OMCGs, which are outlaw motorcycle gangs They are more akin to like the Hells Angels in the United States, which I believe that there are Hells Angels in Australia as well. There are also gangs like the Mongrels. I'm not so familiar with all of the names, but they are gangs that are related through their shared interest in motorcycles and also can be prone to this level of violence. And there are connections to mixed martial arts with them as well. This is not a new phenomenon in Australia, though. This has been going on for many years, and that is evident by this person talking about it. This is Jim Tosanis, who was a mixed martial arts promoter and a criminal himself. I'm not going to play the entirety of this video because a lot of what he talks about later on in it is not relevant to this conversation, but I did want to play the beginning of it to let you hear a little bit about this man's life and why it's interesting that he specifically is connected to mixed martial arts.
Jim Tosanis was once feared by both police and criminals. After years in jail and then almost 2 decades of anonymity as a legitimate businessman, he's back. The former army commando and intelligence officer has written a tell-all manuscript, a who's who of crimes and criminals. Now he expects a hitman to come after him again, after 4 attempts already made on his life.
So there you go. I mean, 4 attempts on this dude's life. It's amazing that he is still alive, or at least was as of 2020. I'd have to check on his current well-being. But you can infer a connection there. This is a man who was a part of the underworld, had 4 attempts made on his life, and was a mixed martial arts promoter in Australia, Gold Coast. So this is a long-standing problem, it would seem. Here's another incident that you might recall. If you remember, Walter Walker fought one of the Taffa brothers, Junior it was. Walter Walker fought Junior Taffa, had that interesting finish to that fight where it was a heel hook and a verbal cry out, which was considered a tap, which it rightly should have been. And this is Johnny Walker talking about Walter's experience after that incident.
I see my brother happened to my brother once in Australia. He have to he beat Taffa, one of the Taffa brother, and then he have to fly on the same night because he was chasing on the when he get to the hotel, have like a motorbike guys, like fucking 20 or 30 guys waiting for him there. And then he have to change the hotel and change his flight because the guys wanna beat him, like Taffa's brother teammates or whatever, motorcycle gang or something. And he have to fly quick to Russia because he have to change the hotel and fly straight away because the guys wanna beat him up or something.
Based on what you just heard there, it would seem that the Taffa brothers perhaps somewhere connected to some of this, or at least know people who know people kind of thing. Because basically, to summarize what Johnny Walker just said there, Walter Walker fought Junior Taffa, and after that, apparently 20 or 30 bikers were waiting at his hotel to have a little talk with him, to the point where he had to flee, leave the country, and hightail it to Russia. So my point is that there would seem to be a overlap between mixed martial arts and gang culture in Australia, and it's one that has had a number of very violent incidents. Thankfully for the Walker brothers, this did not bubble over into any deeper or more elevated levels of violence, but it certainly could have. And now you see that it can get very deadly, as we found out with Suman Mokhtarian. It's the last piece that I have for this. This, of course, is not Australia, but neighboring country of New Zealand. This is from also in May. This is when Dan Hooker had been doing his backyard 1-minute fight event, tournament style, 32 guys duking it out as hard as they can for a minute. Kind of a cool concept, and I give Dan Hooker a lot of credit for taking it upon himself to do something awesome like that, because that harkens back to the early days of MMA, and I appreciate that. Backyard fighting, I'm from Florida, Kimbo Slice, we know a lot about that down here, so in and of itself, very cool, but this element of it kind of speaks to what we're talking about. This is from the New Zealand Herald. Fighter at Dan Hooker's backyard brawl event referred to police. And why was that? Well, a mongrel mob member involved in an unregulated backyard fight has been referred to police. The event, promoted by MMA fighter Dan Hooker, offered a $50,000 prize and $1,000 to participants. Police Minister Mark Mitchell is seeking advice on addressing unregulated fighting events. All right, that's besides the point, but why was it a problem? Well, this guy, one of the 32 fighters involved in a controversial unregulated backyard fight contest at the weekend, has been referred to police. The man, whom Checkpoint understands is a senior member of the mongrel mob from the Bay of Plenty, was wearing an electronic monitoring bracelet in footage of his fight released to social media and was supposed to be attending a rehabilitation program. Now, that in and of itself, got to give the guy some credit. He's supposed to be at a rehab facility, but decided, screw that, I'm going to go fight. However, gang member, and again, I know these are two separate countries, but very close. Often you see New Zealanders fighting on Australian cards and vice versa. I would think that there's probably a little bit of overlap there. Over 30 fighters gathered on Saturday in an undisclosed Auckland backyard to compete for a $50,000 prize. Social media posts showed the event, promoted by well-known MMA fighter Dan Hangman Hooker. And you don't even need to play this video to know what's going on here. Man is face planting mid-frame. It was billed as 32 fighters going head-to-head in 1-minute scraps to be the last man standing and crowned king of the streets. All fighters were subsequently offered $1,000 for competing. Checkpoint raised the issue with Corrections earlier on Tuesday. Its director of community operations, David Grigg, said the gang member with the electronic monitoring bracelet was granted approval to attend a rehabilitation program by a provider approved by the courts. He said it was part of the man's bail conditions. He said Corrections received assurance the absence was for a rehabilitation activity focused on wellness and physical health. That's one way to put it. This dude was on an ankle monitor pending bail, and what crimes were those stemming from? This is a man who's gang affiliated and taking part in this type of activity in the fight world. So, I mean, loose connection perhaps, but a connection nonetheless. He said since receiving new information about the nature of the gang member's absence, it has now been referred to police. Speaking to Checkpoint this evening, Police Minister Mark Mitchell said that while he did not know all the details of this case, gang members tend to be violent and they tend to not want to stick to the rules. A little bit of an understatement. It's very interesting to me when you have a country like New Zealand specifically. Of Australia, a little bit rougher around the edges, but New Zealand, from everything that I've seen, extremely polite culture. So to have gang members in this country, I would think that would be a bit of a culture shock to the otherwise very mild-mannered and polite populace. This police officer here kind of making my point by saying, these gang members, they tend to be a little violent and they don't want to stick to the rules. Yeah, buddy. Our community-based corrections officers are outstanding. They do a fantastic job. I wonder what kind of resources they have if Australia's not getting many. I'm sure if this guy is in breach of his conditions, then our corrections team will take action on that. It's funny that the local newspaper here, this is the New Zealand Herald, covering the entire country, is speaking to a police officer who has no idea about this circumstance here. So anyway, again, loose connection to be sure, but you're seeing a lot of dots here, and these are just the ones that I was able to find legitimate information about with news articles. I am not including any of the rumors and hearsay that I have heard behind the scenes, nor does any of this information reflect on any Australians that I know, because there have been various conversations, not with the people that I know, but in other places around the internet, that would lend one to believe that this problem goes deeper than Australian Top Team, than the motorcycle gang specifically. It would seem to be an interconnected web of overlap between mixed martial arts and gang violence between Australia, New Zealand, etc. So just wanted to shine a little bit of a light on that because, again, it's something that has come up multiple times. And, you know, this is something that people don't want to speak about. I had asked a person from Australia, who will remain nameless, if they would be willing to come on, even under condition of anonymity. Just, you know, you could be voice only, no names, no, you know, voice changer if you wanted to. He would not even do that in fear of any of the details linking back to him, because any connections can get you caught up in something very, very dangerous in Australia, and I would assume by extension New Zealand. So this is an issue that it would seem, based on what we've just discussed here, that A, is more prevalent than people may understand or realize, and B, one that the police force may not be equipped to handle. Again, I am not in Australia. I don't know all of the boots on the ground information regarding this. This is all secondhand and what I've been able to gather through conversations and through my research. But this is my takeaway, is that it would seem that there is an overlap between these communities, which is very unfortunate for the sport. Obviously, both of those countries, Australia and New Zealand, well represented in mixed martial arts, two very active communities, both of fighters and of fans. We literally just saw an event in Australia very recently. We have more coming up, you know, Auckland, Perth, you know, Auckland, New Zealand, of course, but, you know, Perth, Australia, Adelaide, Sydney. Again, with New Zealand, you've got Auckland, you've got Wellington. I mean, there are a lot of places between these two countries where mixed martial arts is very thriving, and to have this type of involvement from the seedier elements of society, I think is very negative for the sport. Hopefully fighters who are participating in this sport, especially as they rise through the ranks and gain status, are leaving this lifestyle behind them and able to disconnect from it entirely. Because it would seem that in the case of Suman Mokhtarian, that was something that he was unable to do. And that is very unfortunate. So to end this thing, rest in peace to Suman Mokhtarian. My sympathies go out to his family, and I hope that through incidents like this, if there is any sliver of a silver lining, that it might be a wake-up call to any gang-affiliated individuals in the country of Australia and New Zealand by extension to distance yourself entirely from this culture, because it gets very negative very quickly. That's all that I have for this. Thank you very much for watching. Leave a like and a comment on this video, and I will see you in the next one.